Hello, I'm Ingrid, and I'm 27 years old. I was orphaned at a very young age because both my parents passed away in a car crash. They didn't have any family to look after me, so I was put into an orphanage. I was there for about 3 years before my parents adopted me. My adoptive parents turned out to be these billionaires, so I had a pretty rich and fulfilling life after that. They didn't want to make my adoption a big deal, so they kept it hushed up. They wanted to do good without it having been broadcast everywhere. When I turned into an adult and had my own place, the two of them decided that they wanted to expand their business further and took to touring Europe in search of opportunities. It was around this time that I met Patrick, my now ex-husband. We met in college and instantly liked each other after a couple of conversations. Patrick was a very happy-go-lucky, caring man that made me like him a whole lot more. Our dates led to us becoming an official couple. We had the perfect relationship, although there was one problem. It was no secret that Patrick's family did not like me. The first time I met them, Patrick and I had just graduated college. He waited to introduce me to his parents until we were both well settled in our lives. By that, I mean that we were both working good jobs. Patrick had warned me that his parents tended to be a little judgmental when it came to their children's significant others, and he wanted me to have the best impression I could. I didn't mind because, if I was being completely honest, I hated meeting the parents. It was a nerve-wracking thing, and if I had the option to delay it, I would choose it over and over again. By the time Patrick had introduced me to his parents, we had been dating for a good 4 years. In those 4 years, we also got engaged. So I guess that in itself, it was going to be a problem for his parents, considering they never even got to know me as his girlfriend. I remember freaking out about it with Patrick the day before we were supposed to meet his parents. "They're going to hate me, Patrick." "They won't, I promise you." "Do you not think that they'll be shocked to find out that we're engaged?" "Well, yeah, but I don't think it will be that big of a deal." "Are you being serious right now? You were scared about introducing me to them because you know how judgy they are. And you think introducing me as your fiancé is not going to make them judge me even more? Look, even if they do, will what they say really matter? It won't to me, but I don't know about you. You always seem so careful about them. I promise you that it won't affect or matter to me at all, Ingrid." "All right, if you say so. But do you think maybe we should just not tell them we're engaged and then like a month or so later we should tell them? Will that make you feel any better about this whole thing? Because I have no problem with either of the options." "I think we should hide it. Just in case. I'll do anything to get on their good side." "You have nothing to worry about. I'll be there with you no matter what." "Thanks, sweetie." The only reason I had been freaking out so much was because whenever I suggested that Patrick tell his parents about me, he would make a whole fuss about them not going to approve of me. Now, at this point, I began to kind of understand why. You see, Patrick's family were pretty rich, and they loved to live lavishly. They wanted that for their children as well, and the only way they accepted their children dating was if they also mingled with people who were as rich or even richer than them. The way I was living back then was by no means rich, according to their standards. I hadn't told Patrick about my family because I didn't see the point of it. Plus, by the time I figured out why he was so adamant about not letting me introduce myself to his parents, I felt like it was even more unnecessary for them to know just who my father was. I wanted them to like me for me and not for my money. I naively believed that they would like me that way, but oh boy, was I wrong. We decided to meet Patrick's parents at a fine dining restaurant at that time. Patrick held my hand as we walked in. I wore my engagement ring on my necklace because I wanted to keep it on me without actually drawing any attention to it. When we got to our table, his parents already looked upset. Patrick told me to expect that because they were big sticklers about time and we had arrived exactly 2 minutes late. Well, we were already off to a bad start. His parents gave me a once-over and twisted their faces into disgust. They proceeded to ignore me for a little while as they made conversation with Patrick. I will admit I felt really small in their eyes. The longer they ignored my presence, the stronger my urge grew to leave. I kept my head down for the most part until finally Patrick drew his parents' attention towards me. "Mom, Dad, you can't just keep talking to me. Here, this is my wonderful girlfriend, Ingrid." "Oh, hello. It's a pleasure to meet both of you." I wish I could say the same. "Mom?" "What? I'm only speaking the truth." "So, Ingrid, I heard you and Patrick met in college, is that right?" "Yes, we did. We happened to share some classes together." And how did you manage to attend this college? From what I know, the tuition is pretty high, and it's a pretty hard place to get into." "Dad, that is enough." "Patrick, you will not speak to your father that way. He's asking a very valid question. Ingrid, please answer him." "Well, I got a full ride there. I'm super grateful I got to go there because not only did I get to learn a lot of things, but I also got to meet Patrick, which has been one of the best things that has happened to me." "Of course, it's one of the best things that's happened to you. He's loaded and you need that kind of money. At least you have some brains because your looks aren't all that good." "You know what? That's enough. We're leaving. Come on, Ingrid." Patrick grabbed my hand and we walked out. I was in shock at the way that his parents had treated me. I couldn't believe that people could be so mean so openly and to the person's face. I was in too much shock to even feel anything. The car ride back home was silent because Patrick was fuming. When we reached home, Patrick made it a point to make sure that I was doing okay. But truthfully, at the moment, I really did not know how to feel. I had dressed up nicely and made sure that I sat properly as well. I didn't order anything expensive, but somehow, without me even saying a word, Paula and Marley made their judgment about me. Patrick didn't speak to his parents for a while after that. They texted him and told him that we had been very disrespectful by walking out on them during lunch. Patrick didn't respond to that and only texted them about a month later to tell them that he had gotten engaged. His parents weren't too happy about it, but Patrick threatened them with no contact if they said or did anything against me. They offered to pay for our wedding on the condition that they got to make all the decisions regarding it. Obviously, neither Patrick nor I wanted that, so we decided to do the next best thing, elope. My parents were in Europe, and they knew about me eloping. They were just happy that I was happy, and they did send Patrick and me a gift. Patrick did raise his brows at how they sent us a pretty expensive painting as a gift, but I just brushed it off as them having enough money to spend it on that. After getting married, we next met Paula and Marley at a party that they had hosted. They invited us to celebrate their anniversary. Truth be told, I was actually pretty happy that they had invited me despite the dislike they held for me. When we got there, I was ignored by everyone. If you think being ignored by 2 people was embarrassing, being ignored by about 30 people was even worse. I hung by Patrick's side for the most part, but nobody even tried to talk to me. If I ever did try to speak and make conversation, people would just either look me up and down and walk away, or they would continue talking to Patrick as if I never said anything. By the end of the night, I was in tears. I was humiliated and downright disgusted by the behavior that everyone was showing. The crowd had asked Paula and Marley to make a speech at the end of the night, and they got up to make one. By this time, I was tired and I wanted to go home. But in their speech, they began by talking about how grateful they were to have almost everyone in the room in their lives. That was only the first jab that they threw at me. They kept making many more, which the guests kept laughing at. At some point, I just got up and walked out. I ordered an Uber and went back home. I cried the entire way back home and up until Patrick got back home. When he got back, he seemed upset and angry. "Why did you walk out like that? Do you know how embarrassing that was for me?" "What? What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb with me right now, Ingrid. I had to endure my parents yelling at me and a lot of the guests pitying me for being with you." "Are you serious? What about how embarrassing it was for me?" "Oh, come on, Ingrid. You could deal with it for one night. It was my parents' anniversary, for God's sake." "I was ignored by everyone, and your parents chose to make even more fun of me in their toast. How do you possibly expect me to be okay with something like that?" "I'm not saying what they did was right, but you could have just lived through it. I would have spoken to them about it after." "What would that have done for me? I don't like being put in positions where I'm only being humiliated. Everyone was laughing at me. You've never been in that position before, so it's easy for you to talk about this like it's no big deal." "My parents expect an apology from you. I want one too." "I'm afraid that I won't be doing that. I'll only do that if they give me one too. As for your apology, I see no reason for apologizing to you. You always stood up for me. I don't see why this is any different." "This is very different because, unlike before, you humiliated my family in front of all our guests." "And your parents humiliated me, your wife, in front of all their guests." "Maybe my parents were right about you. You're impossible." With that, Patrick went to sleep in the guest bedroom. I couldn't understand why he'd had a sudden change of behavior. Was it really that bad for him after I walked out? He was always the first person to stand up for me, especially considering the fact that I was usually bored with whatever his parents had to say about me. For me to walk out should have been the biggest signifier of just how bad they made me feel, yet Patrick didn't seem to care about that. Patrick didn't talk to me for the next week. I also got a lot of texts from his parents calling me ungrateful and an embarrassment. I tried to talk to Patrick, but he refused to. Eventually, I decided to give in and apologize to both him and his parents. Even that felt humiliating, but I was willing to go through it because I loved Patrick and I didn't want this to be the hill I died on. Things after that only worsened things for me. Patrick's parents retired and spent a lot of their time hosting family dinners. They hosted it once a week and Patrick was always invited. The first time they hosted it, Patrick brought me along with him to their house. As soon as I stepped in, the atmosphere in the room got awkward. Paula was busy getting ready, so she didn't see me immediately, but Marley and the rest of Patrick's siblings awkwardly glanced at me. They didn't talk to me, and Patrick left me to stand by myself while he caught up with the rest of his family. When Paula came downstairs, she saw me and practically flew over to me in rage. "What are you doing here?" "Excuse me?" "No, I will not excuse you. What are you doing in my house right now?" "Well, you invited us for dinner." "Wrong. I invited Patrick because it's a family dinner." "I'm Patrick's wife, so I'm a part of this family, am I not?" "Absolutely not. An orphan like you deserves no space in this family." What? You thought you could hide the detail from us? We do background checks on our children's spouses, and you are not in my son's league whatsoever. I will never accept you here. Why not? That can't be the only thing that determines whether I get to be a part of your family. You're ugly and poor. You'd never fit into our elite circles. I never want to see you again. Why are you being so superficial? Are you scared that I'll damage your reputation just by existing? Does the fact that I bring your son happiness not satisfy you? If happiness brought in money, a lot of people would be billionaires. This is exactly why you'd never fit in with us. Or maybe I'll just never be as superficial as the rest of you because I value who a person actually is. You never even took the chance to get to know me before casting your judgments on me. I'm glad I don't fit in with you. Ingrid, that's enough. Here's some money, get yourself an Uber and leave. I stared at Patrick in shock as he held out the money. He shoved the money in my hands and turned back around towards his mother. She smirked at me. I felt tears spring into my eyes as I turned back around and walked out. I was once again crying in the Uber. I didn't understand why Patrick had changed so drastically. Was this his way of making up to his parents after the party? Whatever it was, I was hurt and angry at him. He was okay with his parents using my past as an insult and defending them instead of me, like he usually did. I wanted to yell and scream, but I knew that would only project a worse image of me and prove them right, which is why I walked away. I tried to think if anything I said was out of line, but I really did not see anything wrong. I was merely standing up for myself, calmly might I add. After Patrick came back home, he went back to not talking to me. My heart was breaking and I felt so alone. I knew that he expected another apology, but I couldn't bring myself to do it like the last time. Paula had blatantly insulted me in the worst way, and Patrick was angry at me for it. If anything, I expected an apology from him. For the next 2 weeks, Patrick and I didn't speak to each other. It was hard at first, but I got used to it eventually. The dinners his family hosted still happen, and about once a week I was all alone at home, which I truthfully did not mind. On one of those nights, my parents video called me. Hey, honey. Hey, sweetie, how's it going? Hey, Dad. Hey, Mom. Things are going not good. Why? What's wrong, sweetie? If you need help with anything, feel free to ask us. I don't think this is something you guys would be able to help me out with, but thanks for the offer. Where's Patrick? Is he not helping? That's the thing. He's part of the problem. Huh? Sweetie, could you be a little more clear about what the problem is? Well, his parents are pretty wealthy and also very snobby. Ugh, I hate those kinds of people. Tell me about it. Anyways, they thought that I was some poor girl who could never live up to their standards and fit into their elite circles. So they took it upon themselves to humiliate me every time that I met them. What the hell? Oh yeah, and the last time I went over, Patrick's mom decided calling me an orphan was a good insult. Oh, that woman. I'm going to claw her face off. How dare she call my precious child an orphan? Do they not know about us? And what the hell has Patrick been doing in all this? I didn't tell them about you guys because I knew that their opinion of me would change if they knew, and I wanted them to like me for who I was and not for my wealth. As for Patrick, he's siding with them. He thinks that I was disrespectful when I stood up for myself. Honey, are you sure this is the man you want to be with? I love him a lot, but this is not how I want it to be. We haven't been speaking to each other for the last 2 weeks, and I'm surprisingly okay with that now. We can provide you with the best lawyer. Just say the word, okay? I think I will need your help with that, actually. I'm done with this. All right, sweetie, I'll get you in touch with one of my friends over there. As for your worry about us not being able to help you out, I think we might actually be able to help you get a little sweet revenge. Huh? What do you mean? Your dad and I are coming there next week. We wanted to take you and Patrick on a vacation, but now we can just take you. More things for us to do together, I guess. Really? Oh my God, I'm so excited to finally get to see the two of you in person again. That was a real pick-me-up. Finally, I felt happy after so long. The three of us continued to talk for a little while after that. Dad elaborated on his plan to help me after a little while. He asked me where these dinners of theirs were being held, and as far as I knew, they took turns hosting in their house and at restaurants. Conveniently, the week that my parents were coming, the dinner was going to happen in a restaurant. I needed to get information on where exactly this dinner was going to be held so I could provide my parents with the location. Thankfully, I had Patrick's email logged into my phone, and if there was one thing I knew about Paula and Marley, it was that they loved to email everyone everything. It wasn't that hard to get the location, and I gave it to my parents. At the same time, my mom's lawyer friend contacted me and we got started on the process of filing for divorce. My parents landed in the States and decided to check into their hotel where I met them. We had lunch together, and then the two of them sent me on my way for a spa day that they entirely paid for because they thought I deserved it, while they got ready to get revenge on my in-laws. My parents walked into the restaurant that Patrick and his family were at. According to Dad, when they approached the table, Marley and Paula began to murmur among themselves as they recognized just who he was. Mom told me that this was how the conversation went. "Hello? Oh my gosh, Mr. Burns, what brings you here?" "Oh, well, I just happened to see some familiar faces, and I figured that I could drop in and probably dine with you." "Familiar faces? Who are you speaking about, Mr. Burns?" "Well, I see Patrick." Me? Well, hello, a pleasure to meet you. My daughter has spoken a lot about you, but speaking of my daughter, where is she?" "Your daughter? I'm afraid you're mistaken. I don't think she's here." "But she should, right?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Burns, but we didn't even know that you had a daughter." "Of course I do, and she's married to Patrick." "What? I'm sorry, but I think you're mistaken." "Yes, his wife's name is Ingrid, and she was an orphan." "Yes, I do know that, and that is why we adopted her." Excuse me? You're her dad?" "Yes. And from what I see, she isn't here. She's been telling me that there has been some problems with her in-laws, but I see what the problem was. It was you." "No, she was the one who hid this huge thing from us. If we knew..." "You would have treated her better? She didn't want you to treat her nicely because of her background." "Oh well. She did ask me to hand this over to Patrick." My dad handed Patrick the divorce papers and walked out. After that, it only took a couple of phone calls for a lot of investors to pull away from Marley's business. They were quickly crashing, and nothing was more satisfying than watching them crumble down to the levels that they made fun of. I got a lot of texts from all Patrick's family calling me a bunch of nasty names, while some of them begged me to talk to my dad and reverse what he had done. Patrick thankfully signed the divorce papers without any hassle. My parents and I went on a long vacation after that. I had the time of my life, and I slowly began to heal. Yeah, it hurt that I had lost the love of my life, but I also learned just how important it is to stand up for myself. I'm forever grateful to my parents for everything they've done for me, and I can't wait to see what else life has to offer me.